People used to say that staying quiet was the safest choice. For a long time, I believed that too. But that all changed the day I finally spoke up. It was a Thursday late in the afternoon. I had just come back from a meeting about vendor compliance when my assistant quietly slipped a note onto my desk. "Jerry wants to see you. Conference room C. Now." There was no subject, no explanation, just a direct order from the CEO, like I was a student being called to the principal's office. But I wasn't nervous. I'd been with Novice Global for 25 years. I'd seen every new system, every company we'd acquired, and every emergency we'd had to solve since 1993. Back when the market crashed and chaos took over, I was the one still standing in the war room, while other executives hid and waited for it to pass. When I walked into conference room C, Jerry was there alone. His sleeves were rolled up, and he looked like he was ready for a tough conversation. He didn't even ask me to sit down. "We're bringing someone new onto the team," he said. "Her name's Eleanor. She'll be joining strategic integration. I want you to train her." He paused for a moment, making sure I heard every word. I blinked. Integration was a senior-level position. He nodded. "She has a lot of potential, very sharp, very intuitive. I think she'll bring a new perspective." That's when I understood. This wasn't a request. It was an order. I'd met Eleanor once at a company event. She wore a striking green dress and called our logistics director the warehouse guy. She didn't have any business background, no technical know-how, but she held onto Jerry's arm as she belonged there. I stayed calm and replied, "With respect, I don't think I'm the right person to train her. And, honestly, I'm not sure she's qualified for this role." The room fell silent. Jerry's friendly smile faded. He tapped his pen once, then nodded coldly. "That'll be all, Jennifer." No argument. No explanation. Just dismissal. I left the room with my heart pounding, but somewhere deep inside, I already knew what was coming next. That night, when I tried to log into the system to approve some budgets, my password didn't work. I tried again, still locked out. I called IT. No answer. I emailed HR and got an automatic reply. By the next morning, my badge wouldn't work. By the end of the day, I wouldn't even exist in the company I helped build. All because I said what no one else dared to. I barely slept that night, waiting for an email to clear things up. Maybe it was a mistake, I thought. But when I got to the office the next morning, the security guard didn't even look at me. He just said, "You'll need to go straight to HR." No badge, no access, no eye contact. Walking down the hallway felt strange. This was the same hallway where I'd once celebrated closing a $370 million deal, trained new leaders, rebuilt systems, and spent countless weekends. Now, when I reached HR, there was no chair for me. Just a thin folder and a forced smile from the HR manager. "Per the executive directive, we're initiating a mutual separation," she said. "You'll find the terms reasonable." Mutual separation. Like I'd suddenly decided to become a gardener after 25 years in boardrooms. She went through the agreement, severance, non-disparagement, and vague details about helping with the transition. But the part that stung was one line in the contract. Employee agrees to provide knowledge handoff to Eleanor Johnson, incoming director of strategic integration. There was her name, written in black and white. I was supposed to pass everything I'd built over to her. I didn't react. I just nodded and held the folder in my lap. Inside, though, I was furious. I had designed those systems. I had created the very protocol Eleanor would now be given, like a starter kit. I had fought for this company, even when Jerry was still learning the ropes. And now I was supposed to hand it all over to someone who didn't know the difference between fiscal and physical inventory. I didn't sign. I left HR and walked back to what used to be my office. The nameplate was already gone. A janitor was stacking boxes outside the door. "They told me to start early," he said, avoiding my eyes. I thanked him, even though my voice was shaky. I sat at my desk one last time and looked out the window. I saw Jerry in the courtyard below, laughing with Eleanor. She wore the same white blazer she had at the gala, the same one she wore when she said our supply chain strategy looked boring. My jaw tightened. I wasn't just let go. I was erased, replaced, forgotten. They wanted me to disappear quietly in exchange for a signature and a check. But they didn't realize that I had no intention of fading away. Not this time. I always thought if I ever left, it would be on a Friday, with cake in the break room and kind words from colleagues. Maybe Jerry would say something formal. Maybe my real team would make a card, and someone would get teary. But instead, I stood alone in my glass-walled office on a Wednesday morning, watching a janitor pack up my career. It was still early, just after 10. The floor wasn't even busy yet. HR had told me to clear out before everyone arrived. Not to say goodbye. Not to wrap things up. Just to leave. I'd spent over 25 years earning that office. I'd worked early mornings and late nights, back when the company still met in cheap co-working spaces. I walked in before the lights came on, and most Fridays, I was the last one out. And just like that, it was all over. Now I had to pack up everything I'd built, quietly, before anyone even realized I was leaving. There was no farewell message, no handshake, no sense of closure, just the dull sound of cardboard and a growing feeling that I was being erased. I moved slowly, step by step, taking down pieces of my history. The supplier award from 2008, the thank you letter from a logistics partner we'd saved, and a photo of my team in front of our first international hub. Half of those faces were already gone. I was one of the last originals, and soon, I'd be gone too. No one knocked or came to say goodbye, but I could feel eyes on me through the glass walls. Some people I'd mentored or helped get promoted glanced over with guilty looks. Others just walked past, pretending not to see me. Angela, an analyst I'd supported since her first day, passed by with arms full of papers. She didn't even slow down. She used to be friendly, but now she acted like I was invisible. I didn't blame her. At Novice Global, surviving often meant not getting noticed when things changed. Right now, I was someone no one wanted to be around. I opened my last locked drawer. Inside was a simple, worn-out notebook filled with old process sketches and thank you notes from years ago. I'd forgotten all about it. I looked at the cover for a long moment, then slipped it into my bag. As I closed up my last box, I noticed a yellow sticky note stuck under my monitor. I hadn't seen it before. It said, "You are the reason I didn't quit. Thank you." My chest tightened. Maybe it was Sophia, the new intern, who always stayed after meetings to ask good questions. There was no name, no drama, just a small message from someone brave enough to say what others wouldn't. I pressed the note between my fingers like it was proof I'd made a difference. But then came the final sting. I tried to log into the system to send a few files to my drive. Access denied. My account was already shut down. Out of curiosity, I checked the company directory to see if my name was still there. It wasn't. My role, my notes, my entire history gone. It was like I'd never worked there at all. I sat at my desk one last time, thinking about all the hard work and long nights I'd put in, believing that being good at your job would protect you. I'd been wrong. I pushed my last box toward the elevator and didn't look back. If I had, I might have cried, and this place didn't deserve my tears. Not all new beginnings start with noise. Some begin with silence. 8 months before Jerry Wright decided I was no longer needed, I had already started building a life outside the company, though I didn't know it yet. It began with a lunch invitation from someone I hadn't seen in over a decade, Ethan Davis, a former consultant turned tech entrepreneur. We'd met years ago during a messy merger, and our shared love of making things run better kept us loosely in touch. One afternoon, Ethan called out of the blue. "Still working miracles for ungrateful executives?" he teased. I laughed. "You say that like I have a choice." "You do," he said. "Let's meet for lunch." My treat. So, I found myself sitting across from him at a quiet cafe on Madison Avenue. Ethan was as sharp as ever, but more focused now. He opened his laptop and showed me a prototype. "This," he said, tapping the screen, "is Nariva." Nariva was a bold idea, a smart strategy tool powered by adaptive AI, able to simulate the decision-making of an entire executive team. No bias, no office politics, no waiting for quarterly reports. I was curious. "What are you looking for?" I asked. "A partner," Ethan replied. Someone who knows the real challenges inside companies. Someone who's survived the chaos and can help make sense of it for the system. I didn't say yes right away. I still had my job at Novice Global and a department to run. But deep down, something inside me was ready for change. Over the next few months, I helped Ethan refine Nariva in the evenings, on weekends, and during business trips. We worked quietly, using co-working spaces, borrowed offices, and even fake names on documents. I didn't want attention. I wanted to build something that actually mattered. And for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. We built, tested, failed, and improved. Ethan handled the tech. I translated the real-world mess of corporate life into something Nariva could understand. We created a system that could adapt quickly, without endless committee meetings. Then came our first real test. A logistics consulting firm agreed to try Nariva in a struggling regional branch. Ethan was excited. I was nervous. 3 weeks after they started, Nariva found a pattern of wasteful vendor contracts, saving them over $500,000 in the first month. The results were undeniable. What Ethan didn't know, and what I only realized later, was that this consulting firm was a former partner of Novice Global. In fact, I had worked with them on a supply chain project years ago. When I saw the name on the analysis report, I froze. It felt like a shadow from my old life had followed me into my new one. But I stayed quiet and let it pass. After that, more clients joined us. People who cared about results, not hype. I kept working in the background. I wasn't looking for revenge or praise. I just wanted to build something nobody could take away from me. I stopped waiting for permission and started making my own rules. I didn't need anyone to notice my work. I just wanted to know I was building something real. I knew that one day, the same people who pushed me out would end up working with the new company I'd helped create, and only then realize I never really left. I told myself I wouldn't look back, but news started to reach me. Novice Global looked fine on the outside, but inside, things were falling apart. Eleanor was struggling, and the cracks were starting to show. Friends from inside sent quiet messages. "She's drowning, and clients are asking about you." I didn't reply. I just checked Nariva's dashboard and saw the company losing clients and staff. Even when Eleanor was promoted, it didn't matter. I wasn't angry anymore. I just sat in my new office, working on what mattered to me, and watched the old company chase its tail. Now, I didn't need to raise my voice. The results spoke for themselves. Every week, Nariva brought on new clients, some curious, some desperate, but all impressed by what we delivered. Ethan called me into a meeting one Wednesday morning. "We're closing the ring," he said, pointing to the dashboard. "If we keep this up, we'll cover 3 regions by next quarter." I agreed. "We'll need someone strong to handle operations." He smiled. "I think I know the right person." That's when Diane walked in. I hadn't seen her in years. She was one of the smartest strategists at Novice Global, but they pushed her aside for someone with a fancier title. Now, she was joining Nariva. Later that day, Diane messaged me. "It's clear now, you've always been the real leader." I didn't need to reply. She understood. This time, we were building something together on our terms. Meanwhile, Eleanor kept struggling at Novice Global, messy rollouts, public mistakes, and no growth. Jerry stuck by her, maybe out of pride or habit. I just watched in silence. Their clients and consultants were leaving, many coming to us. That Friday, Nariva landed a contract Novice Global had been chasing for months. As Ethan and I signed it, he asked, "Are we here to take them down?" I shook my head. "They're doing that themselves. We just need to be ready when it's over." Weeks later, Ethan smiled during our team call. "You'll love this. Novice Global just requested a partnership with us." I raised an eyebrow. "Guess who recommended us?" he said. I didn't have to ask. It was Eleanor. She had no idea I was behind Nariva. My name was nowhere on the website. That's how I wanted it. When the meeting came, I joined quietly as a silent advisor, camera off. Eleanor and Jerry looked tired. Their team nodded along as Ethan explained how Nariva solved real business problems. Eleanor spoke up, proud to have recommended us. She mentioned Canwell Group, a client who praised us at a summit. I smiled to myself. Camwell was one of the first accounts I closed. Now, the numbers did all the talking. I didn't need credit. I didn't need to be seen. I just needed to keep building what truly mattered. After going independent, I built the integration system that left their old process in the dust. Of course, their clients raved about it. The meeting ended with both sides interested, an NDA signed, and a request for us to design a custom pilot for them. When the call ended, Ethan looked at me and said, "That was poetic." I just smiled. I didn't write poetry. I just designed the blueprint. They walked in by themselves. That night, I poured a glass of wine. Not to celebrate, but just to mark the moment. The real win wasn't being picked. The win was being needed. They'd once ignored and underestimated me, but now they came back when they needed real results. I didn't need an apology or even recognition. The true victory was quiet and satisfying, knowing I had built something solid and lasting. When Novice Global sent their official request, we were already ahead. Ethan and the legal team handled the basics, but I shaped the pilot program myself, just enough to be helpful, just enough to make us essential. I designed it so the more they used Nariva, the harder it would be to leave. Even our contract gave us partial ownership of any improvements, just in case. Ethan reviewed the agreement and nodded, cold but brilliant. We sent it off. Novice Global replied in a few hours, eager and thankful. Their proposal slide deck had Eleanor's name on the front. On page 10, I stopped. There was a model I'd created years ago, copied almost word for word. Even my unique phrases were still there. I didn't get mad. Instead, I added a new clause to the contract. All future documents had to be checked for originality. If Eleanor kept copying my work, the system would quietly record it. At our next meeting, Eleanor talked excitedly about a strategy framework she claimed as her own. I watched her, knowing I had written it first, and that every word she spoke made her company depend even more on us. Ethan leaned over and said, "I think they're ready to sign." "They already have," I answered. "They just don't know it yet." That night, I sat on my balcony and looked out over the city. I didn't toast or brag. I just felt calm, knowing the best strategy isn't about fighting for power. It's about building something so strong that people hand you the power themselves, thinking it was their idea all along. The next big meeting was set at a fancy hotel. Ethan told me to show up last and let them feel in control. I did. The room was perfect, quiet, polished, and ready. Jerry, Eleanor, and the CFO sat on one side. Ethan and our team were on the other. They didn't even look up when I walked in. When I walked into the room, my heels tapped softly as I took the empty seat next to Ethan. No introductions were needed. I set down my folder, clicked my pen, and exhaled. Eleanor looked up and met my eyes. For a second, her face went pale, but she quickly looked away. Jerry kept talking, bragging about a new chapter of partnership, but his shifting eyes showed his nerves. Ethan went over the agreement points. I stayed quiet, just present. The air in the room grew tense, not all at once, but slowly, like everyone was realizing something important at the same time. Eleanor began her presentation, her voice shaky. She was using my old words and my ideas, but didn't seem to realize it yet. I noticed a young man, maybe a tech assistant, glancing at me. He whispered something to Eleanor, and she stiffened. Then Jerry finally looked at me, really looked, and recognition dawned on his face. "Jennifer," he said, barely audible. Ethan kept talking, ignoring the tension. Jerry's eyes stayed on me, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was hanging in the air. When it was time to sign, I calmly added my signature. No drama, no raised voice, just a quiet transfer of control. Jerry hesitated, then shook my hand. "You're with Nariva?" he asked, still unsure. I met his eyes and answered. "Just a strategist, helping where I'm needed." He nodded, stuck between shock and respect. As everyone stood up, I left the room first, not looking back. The lobby outside was busy, but I walked out with quiet confidence. I didn't need to shout or make a scene. This time, I was the one with the pen. As Jerry stood frozen, still processing, Eleanor broke the silence. We didn't realize you were with Nariva, she said, her voice uncertain. I know, I replied simply. Ethan finalized the papers and pushed them toward Jerry, who could only stare at me, realizing I was the same woman he thought he'd erased. Now, I was the one holding the keys to his company's future. There was no need to gloat or explain. I just waited. Ethan asked if there were any objections to the agreement. Jerry inhaled, then shook his head. No objections. Eleanor started to say something more, but the deal was already done. The room suddenly changed. The power that had once belonged to her was gone, and she knew it. Then, out of the quiet, a voice spoke from the far end of the table. It was measured, calm, and unfamiliar. I'm sorry, said one of the board members, a man in a navy blazer who hadn't spoken the whole meeting. Forgive my ignorance, but why is Ms. Bailey no longer with our company? Jerry didn't answer. Eleanor stayed silent. The quiet stretched across the table, tense as a wire. I met the board member's gaze. I was let go, I said, keeping my voice steady, after I refused to train someone less qualified for the position I'd built. He nodded just once. He understood immediately, and so did everyone else. It wasn't just a question. It was a moment that changed how the room felt. Doubt started to creep in, right where Jerry needed confidence. Doubt spreads quickly. Once it's in the boardroom, it lingers. I stood up slowly and picked up my copy of the signed agreement. My name, clear and bold, sat on the last page. Jennifer Bailey, strategist, silent partner. I had taken my power back. Nobody tried to stop me as I left. Even Ethan remained in his seat, letting the silence settle and speak for itself. Outside, the hallway felt warmer than the chilly conference room. I didn't rush. I had no reason to hurry now. When the elevator arrived, I stepped in alone. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection on the metal wall. This time, I wasn't someone being pushed out of a job. I was someone walking away on her terms, after making a deal only I could have shaped from the inside. The ghost they thought they'd dismissed was real, and she was leaving by choice. Victory didn't feel loud or flashy. There were no cheers, no applause, just a deep, heavy quiet, the kind that follows a storm and shows everything that's changed. Back in the boardroom, my agreement lay open on the table, its crisp pages perfectly arranged. My name, Jennifer Bailey, stood out beneath the last signature line, clear, direct, and with no extra titles or explanations. Just the truth. Across from me, Jerry sat motionless, hands clenched tightly. Eleanor kept her eyes on her notepad, searching for answers that weren't there. The board member who had questioned my exit didn't meet my eyes, or Jerry's. He just leaned back, silent, while the room's mood shifted around him. Ethan nodded once. We're ready when you are, Jennifer. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I reached for the pen, plain and silver, like the ones we'd used in budget meetings. The room seemed to pause as I signed my name, slow and deliberate, across the page. When I finished, I slid the folder forward. The deal was sealed, a plan that had taken months to create and almost 25 years to earn. This wasn't just a typical contract. This was Nariva taking over a strategic role, something they didn't even realize they had agreed to. The true genius was hidden deep in the details, a single clause buried under harmless-sounding language. That small clause shifted administrative power over all client performance review systems to Nariva for optimization support. Now, every review, every report, every key analysis Novice Global did with partners would pass through a system I designed. It wasn't just an agreement, it was true control. Ethan gave me a nod, our unspoken understanding. He'd backed that hidden clause, I wrote it. Their legal team, eager to finish the deal, had let it through. Eleanor cleared her throat. We'll review implementation internally and assign someone to your systems team. She sounded like she was reading a script she didn't believe anymore. Of course, Ethan replied. We'll keep Jennifer involved during the transition. Eleanor flinched, just slightly. Jerry stayed silent. Not even a nod. I stood. No final words, no handshake. I gathered my things, slipped the pen into my folder, and gave the room one last look. The boardroom, once familiar, now felt distant and quiet. I wasn't angry, and I wasn't exactly satisfied either. I felt something new, a sense of calm. Outside, the hallway was lined with modern art and the soft sound of footsteps. I passed the receptionist, who gave me a polite nod. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. At 5 p.m., I pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, I heard voices behind me. Ethan's calm, Eleanor's tense, Jerry's silence louder than anything he could have said. Let them think it over. Let them replay every moment. My departure, this time, was on my terms. I paid back what was owed without making a scene, without needing attention. I just acted, signed, and moved forward. When I reached the lobby, sunlight poured through the high windows. Outside, life went on. Buses pulled away, people hurried, meetings started and ended behind glass. I paused. I wasn't just a part of someone else's story anymore. I was the author now, the one finishing the chapter. And everyone knew it. I didn't wait for the elevator to close before shutting off my phone. I didn't want messages or fake congratulations. I didn't care for Ethan's summary or Eleanor's forced email pretending nothing had changed. All I wanted was a little silence, something just for me. The lobby air felt cooler than before. The revolving doors spun as a woman rushed past, coffee in hand, headset blinking. Nearby, a man in a gray suit argued at the valet stand. But I didn't belong to their world now. I stepped outside, letting the late afternoon breeze cool my face. The sun was setting, painting the buildings in gentle gold. My shoes echoed on the pavement. I heard quick footsteps behind me, light, almost nervous. Miss Bailey. Jennifer, wait. But I didn't look back. Sometimes, closure means not answering. I kept walking and she didn't follow. It was finished. Everything that mattered was written in the agreement, and in the quiet that followed. I didn't want apologies or revenge. I'd been pushed out of the company I built, without a handshake, without thanks. So I made something new, clean, strong, and untouchable because it had a part of me in every piece. I walked 7 more blocks before sitting on a quiet bench near some trees. I let the day settle in. Not tired, just free. My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it but checked anyway. A message from an unknown number. This is Gerald Lewis. We met last year. I followed your work. If you ever want the CEO seat, I have a board ready for you. I read it twice, then again. I didn't reply, not yet, maybe never. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anything. I was standing on what I'd already built, not for payback, not for applause, but for myself. As I sat in the late afternoon calm, I remembered the rooms where I was ignored, the clients who quietly thanked me, and the interns who showed respect in little ways. I thought of Diane, now thriving, and Ethan, who believed in me when I didn't. I remembered that moment at Novice Global, not won by shouting, but by simply being present. I didn't burn the system down. I became the person they needed to rebuild it. Maybe my name won't be in the story, but they'll remember the moment I returned. The moment they saw the one they dismissed was now essential. Sometimes, silence becomes strategy, and strategy changes everything. If you've followed Jennifer's story, thank you for joining her. If you've ever been overlooked or erased, know this. You're not alone. Your comeback doesn't have to be loud to be legendary. If you felt something reading this, share which part meant the most to you, and subscribe for more. The strongest stories aren't about revenge. They're about reclaiming what's yours. And there's more ahead.